millions of Americans, Monday Night Football is a cherished tradition, friends gathering, families bonding over their favorite teams. But on December 22nd, 2025, in a quiet neighborhood in Highland City, Florida, which should have been just another evening of football, became something no one could have imagined. A simple disagreement over changing the channel. That's all it took. And what happened next would shatter a family, horrify a community, and leave investigators asking a question that still haunts them. How does an argument over a TV program end in such devastating loss? Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, this is where we explore real cases that reminds us how fragile life can be and how darkness can hide behind the most ordinary moments. Today's case is the story of Crystal Kenney and the tragedy that unfolded just 3 days before Christmas. Our story today takes us to Highland City, a small community in Polk County, Florida, just outside of Lakeland. If you're not familiar with this part of Florida, it's in the central region of the state. Not quite the tourist beaches of the coast, but a place where families settle, where neighbors know each other, and where life moves at a slower, quieter pace. Highland City is the kind of place where people wave to each other, where kids ride bikes throughout the neighborhood, where Christmas decorations go up early and stay up late. On Lemon Avenue, where our story unfolds, homes are modest but well kept. It's a working class area where people take pride in their properties and look out for one another. December in Florida doesn't bring snow, but there's still that holiday spirit in the air. On the evening of Monday, December 22nd, most families were in the final stretch of preparation, wrapping presents, planning meals, getting ready to celebrate with loved ones. For the Kenney family, their home looks like any other that time of the year. When investigators would later walk through, they described a beautiful Christmas tree standing in the living room, surrounded by presents, wrapped and waiting. From the outside, everything appeared normal, a family preparing for the holidays, just like everyone else on the streets. But behind that facade, there were cracks that no one else could see. Crystal Kenney was just 38 years old, and the mother who put her children first. Those who knew her described her as devoted, caring, someone who worked hard to create a stable home for her kids. She had 2 children from a previous relationship, a 12-year-old son and a 13-year-old daughter. And she and Jason had 1 child together, their 1-year-old daughter. Friends and family say she was always thinking about what was best for them, always trying to protect them, and always putting their needs above her own. Crystal wasn't blind to the problems in her marriage. Investigators would later discover a note that she had written to her husband, undated but found open in the home. She pleaded with him, "You're drinking and you're using cocaine again. This is not the way a family should be. You need God." It's unclear when she wrote those words or if she ever gave them to him, but they paint a picture of a woman who saw the warning signs and who was desperately trying to reach someone slipping away from her. Jason Kenney was 47 years old. To the outside world, he seemed like a regular guy. Neighbors would later say he'd come over to chat, show off his baby girl, wave as he came and went. He had no criminal record, and law enforcement had never been called to the Kenney home for any domestic issues. But that clean record doesn't tell the whole story, and after the events that unfolded, neighbors came forward with a different picture. They told investigators that Jason had been abusive to Crystal for a while now. The abuse apparently happened behind closed doors, in private, where outsiders couldn't see. Jason struggled with substances, and on the night in question, he'd been drinking while watching football in his shed. By all accounts, the family tried to function as a blended unit, celebrating together, living together, and trying to make everything work. But the dynamics of that household, the tension simmering beneath the surface, would soon erupt in the most tragic way. The evening of December 22nd, 2025, the San Francisco 49ers were playing the Indianapolis Colts on Monday Night Football. Jason Kenney was a 49ers fan, and he'd been watching the game out in the shed while drinking throughout the evening. The shed was a separate structure on the property, his own space where he could watch sports, have a few drinks, and just do his own thing. As the game progressed into the late evening hours, the 49ers were winning and the outcome was pretty much decided. Around 11 p.m., Jason decided he wanted to come inside the house and watch the end of the game on the TV in the living room. And that's where Crystal was. When Jason entered and announced he wanted to watch the game, Crystal responded that she didn't want to watch football. She suggested that they watch something else together, It seems like such a small thing, right? The kind of minor disagreement that happens in households everywhere, like who gets the remote, which show to watch, and normally it's resolved with a compromise, maybe one person going to another room, or maybe even taking turns. But Jason had been drinking, and this wasn't going to be a normal disagreement. What started as a simple back and forth quickly grew heated. The conversation became an argument, and the argument became something more intense. Crystal could sense how things were spiraling. She'd seen this before and she knew the signs. In that moment, Crystal made a choice that would save her son's life. She shouted to her 12-year-old boy, "Call 911, go and get help." The boy understood and he ran. He fled the house as fast as his legs could carry him, heading straight for a neighbor's home. As he was running, still close enough to hear, he heard a single gunshot ring out from his own home. The neighbor answered her door to find a terrified child asking her to call for help. His stepfather and mother were fighting, he said, and she immediately dialed 911. Polk County Sheriff deputies responded with urgency. They arrived in less than 5 minutes, and when they entered the home on Lemon Avenue, they found a scene that would shake even experienced investigators. In the living room, they discovered Crystal Kenney. She'd been shot in the head. She was deceased. And the woman who moments earlier had the presence of mind to save her own son was now gone. But unfortunately, the horror was not over. Deputies proceeded through the house and entered a bedroom. There they found Crystal's 13-year-old daughter. The teenage girl had been shot twice, once in the shoulder and once in the face. She was still conscious at the moment, but critically wounded. The shot to her face was particularly shocking in how it occurred. The bullet struck the bridge of her nose and traveled upward, exiting through the top of her head. By all accounts, she should not have survived. The sheriff would describe it as a Christmas miracle that she was still alive. When detectives spoke to the girl, she told them what happened. Jason had come to her bedroom, she saw the weapon, and she knew what was about to happen. "I begged him," she told investigators, "please don't shoot me." But he shot her anyway. In another room, deputies found the couple's 1-year-old daughter still asleep in her crib, completely unharmed. Jason hadn't touched his biological child, but he attempted to take the life of his 13-year-old stepdaughter, and he ended the life of his own wife. By the time deputies arrived, Jason was already gone. He had gotten into his truck and fled the scene. But even as he was driving away, he was still making calls. He phoned his sister, who lived in upstate New York, and the conversation was brief but chilling. "I've done something very, very bad," he told her. "This is the last time you'll ever talk to me. You'll see me on the news, but I'm not going to jail. I'm not going to jail for the rest of my life." Jason drove to Lake Wales, a nearby city. His destination was his deceased father's home, a property that was apparently still in probate and unoccupied. When he arrived, he didn't go into the house itself. Instead, he went directly to a shed on the property. But deputies were tracking Jason's movements. They knew where he had gone, and when they arrived at the Lake Wales property, they set up a perimeter around the shed. They began calling out to him, urging him to come out peacefully. Jason did not respond to their calls. And then they heard it, a single gunshot from inside the shed. When deputies entered, they found Jason Kenney. He'd taken his own life with a gunshot to the forehead. The man who had destroyed his family was now gone as well. Law enforcement had to piece together what had happened. The physical evidence at the scene, the statements from the 12-year-old boy, the account from the surviving 13-year-old girl in the hospital, and Jason's call to his sister all painted a clear picture of the events. This wasn't a mystery in terms of who did what. The tragedy was in understanding how it came to this. During their search of the home, investigators found the note Crystal had written to Jason. It was open, as if it had been recently read or was meant to be found. The exact timing of when she wrote it remains unknown. It could have been written that very evening during an earlier argument, or it could have been written days or weeks before that. But the content was devastating. Crystal had identified the problems, the drinking, the drugs, the need for help, the need for faith. She tried to reach him. She tried to communicate that the family was falling apart and needed intervention. Did Jason read that note before the events unfolded? Did it factor into his state of mind that evening? We may never know. After the incident, neighbors came forward with information that added context to the tragedy. Multiple people told investigators that Jason had been abusive toward Crystal for some time now. But unfortunately, there had never been a single call to law enforcement about domestic issues at the Kenney home, and because of this, there was no documented evidence of Jason's pattern of violence. The sheriff addressed this at a press conference. The warning signs were there, but they were hidden. Crystal hadn't reached out for help from authorities. Maybe she was afraid. Maybe she thought she could handle it herself. Or maybe she thought things would eventually get better. But this is unfortunately common in domestic situations. The violence happens in private, and victims often don't report out of fear, shame, or hope that things will change. The 13-year-old girl was transported to a hospital where she underwent surgery. Despite being shot twice, including once in the head, she survived and was listed in critical but stable condition. She was able to speak with investigators and provide her account of what happened that night. The 12-year-old boy who had fled to the neighbor's house was physically unharmed but had witnessed trauma no child should ever experience. He'd heard the gunshot that ended his own mother's life as he ran for help. The 1-year-old baby, having slept through the violence, was physically safe but had lost both parents in a single night. All 3 children were placed in the custody of their grandparents, and the Department of Children and Families got involved to ensure proper long-term care arrangements. The sheriff spoke about this aspect with obvious emotion. The entire family was destroyed, he said. When our homicide detectives got in there is a beautiful Christmas tree with lots of Christmas presents under the tree, just like any other family. But it ended up in this way. Crystal's sister Stephanie spoke to the media after the tragedy. She emphasized that Crystal died protecting her children, that her final act was to get her son out of the house and to safety by telling him to call 911. My sister died a hero, Stephanie said. She did that for protecting her children. There would be no trial, no lengthy court proceedings, because Jason had taken his own life, ending any possibility of accountability through the legal system. The investigation concluded that this was a domestic situation that had escalated into violence, attempted harm, and ultimately a tragic end. This case leaves us with difficult questions and painful realities to confront. How does an argument over a television program, over something as trivial as what to watch, end in such devastating loss? The answer is that it was never really about the TV. The TV was just the spark that ignited something that had been building for a long time. Jason Kenney was dealing with substance issues. He was drinking heavily that night and had a history of drug use according to Crystal's note. He had allegedly been abusive for some time now, and these are warning signs of someone in crisis, someone who needs intervention. But here's the thing that makes this even more tragic. There was no calls to law enforcement. Despite neighbors being aware of abusive behavior, despite Crystal's concerns documented in that note, there was no official record of problems. No one had reached out for help from authorities. This speaks to a larger issue with domestic situations. So often, they remain hidden until they explode. Victims may not report for many reasons, such as fear of retaliation from their abuser, or having no hope in the legal system, or financial dependency, or hoping the abuser will change, or trying to protect their children from seeing the chaos, or simply not knowing where to turn. All around, it's an absolutely devastating situation that destroyed a family. And the timing, 3 days before Christmas, added another layer of heartbreak to an already unbearable situation. A holiday that should have been about celebrations, about family togetherness, about children opening up presents under the tree, became instead a day of loss and grief. Crystal tried to protect her children in her final moments. She got her son out of the house. She gave him a chance at life by telling him to run and call for help. And that maternal instinct, that fierce protective love, was her final act. But we're also left thinking about what could have been done differently. What if Crystal had felt safe enough reporting the abuse? What if neighbors had made calls to authorities when they witnessed concerning behavior? And what if Jason had accepted help for his substance issues and whatever else was troubling him? These are the questions we ask in hindsight, knowing we can't change what happened, but hoping we can learn something that might prevent the next tragedy. The Highland City case is a reminder that domestic situations can be hidden in plain sight. A home that looks normal from the outside, decorated for the holidays, children playing, a family going about their normal routines, can be concealing serious problems. This case officially concluded with the determination that Jason Kenney took his wife's life, attempted to take his stepdaughter's life, and then ended his own. The surviving children remain in the care of their family members. Thank you for spending this time with me today and for honoring Crystal's memory by learning her story. If you found this case meaningful, I encourage you to share it. So as always, stay safe, stay aware, and stay curious. See you in the next video. Bye.